From the people who help you know your competition, InteliChek presents the Multi-Point Inspection Podcast. The Multi-Point Inspection Podcast brings you news and stories from the automotive world told in an informative and entertaining way.
Seed to plant here is that we are going to be in a situation in a very few amount of years where these cars are going to be fully autonomous. And then we're going to be open 24 hours a day, and we're going to be less retail oriented.
This statement in episode 28 of the Multi-Point Inspection Podcast by Richard Lupo intrigued me and caused me to wonder, just how long will it be before this happens? And just this past August, this was the newsmaker in my neck of the woods.
Really, it is just around the corner. Soon, you could be hopping into an all-electric, driverless rideshare. The San Francisco driverless car company Cruise chose Nashville as one of the very first cities to set up shop.
Now, about 10 years ago, I was driving for Uber in Nashville, and let me tell you, trying to navigate through the sea of cars and pedestrians on Lower Broadway most nights is an absolute nightmare. So the thought of autonomous vehicles in this area gave me pause. But before we ever got a chance to see the driverless taxis in Music City,
we begin tonight with the safety alert. Federal investigators are looking into robo-taxis that are right here in Nashville.
Yeah, regulators say the Cruise cars struggle to see pedestrians and they've hit people in other cities.
But Chris Piche, the founder of Smarter AI, says not so fast. He says that the data is in, and autonomous vehicles are safer than we've been led to believe. He also says that the answer to when we will see AVs at every turn has more to do with the public's acceptance of them than it does lagging technology.
Hi, Brandon. My name is Chris Piche. I am the founder and CEO of Smarter AI. Smarter AI is an enablement software platform for AI cameras. We make AI cameras and computer vision solutions for commercial vehicles. Some of our solutions are aftermarket solutions, so dash cams and vehicle cameras that get added to vehicles after they're manufactured. We also work with vehicle OEMs on camera and computer vision systems that are integrated into vehicles at the time of manufacturing, including for autonomous transportation.
And with one look at Chris's resume, it becomes apparent that his thoughts on this technology should be heard. He has developed and patented foundational technologies, products, and standards for AT&T, BlackBerry, Polycom, and the Open Connectivity Foundation, earning recognition as Best of Internet World, Canada's Top Young Leader, and Top 40 Under 40.
So I'm from the mean streets of Canada. I grew up in Ottawa, Canada. I have a background in computer science. Before I got into cameras and smarter AI, I developed a few different internet video or internet communication technologies and businesses. Some of the more well-known products that I developed, I was involved in something called AT&T TV, which I think was the first service in the U.S. where you could watch movies and television and sports on your phones. And the commercials were done by the Manning brothers. I don't know if you remember something called Football on Your Phone, but they did a series of kind of funny commercials about AT&T TV. Being from Canada, of course, I was involved with BlackBerry. I was responsible for part of the first BlackBerry smartphone, the voice and video calling part of the first BlackBerry smartphone. And I've been involved with a few other communication products and services, Comcast, and a few others in the US. I got the idea to start Smarter AI because I could see the coming convergence of camera technology and AI technology. And I thought the world needed a software platform to manage all of the cameras and all of the AI. So in the same way that we have Android and we have iOS for our phones, I decided to develop Smarter AI to be a software platform for AI cameras. And I've been doing that for about 4.5 years now. And our biggest market by far is vehicle cameras. So again, the OEM camera systems and aftermarket camera systems, including for ADAS, so driver assistance, and autonomous driving.
Chris says that even though the public isn't ready for widespread adoption, AVs are already much safer than human drivers. He makes his case by the numbers.
It's really as much of a sociology issue as it is a technology issue. And here's what I mean by that. We have enough data today that we know on a relative basis how much more safe or unsafe an autonomous vehicle is compared to human driving. And the numbers are clear. Autonomous vehicles are approximately 10 times more safe than human-driven vehicles. Here's how we know that. The National Highway Safety Transportation Association, NHTSA, has been tracking this data for a long time. And for human-driven vehicles, it's very consistent. A human-driven vehicle is involved in a collision about once every 500,000 miles. Tesla, the data is obviously not as old as that, doesn't go as far back as the national data, but Tesla also publishes their own data, which, as many people watching or listening will know, is also used for the Tesla insurance product or service. And the Tesla data shows that a Tesla vehicle equipped with either autopilot or full self-driving crashes between every 5 and 6 million miles. So rough numbers, it's about 10 times more safe. Now, people interested in this topic undoubtedly will remember that for the last, I want to say 7 years, but roughly the last 7 years, Elon Musk at the beginning of every year has famously or infamously declared, this is the year that we're going to get to full self-driving. And I still remember, I think it might have been it was the first or second Tesla that I bought. I was so excited because Elon Musk had said, this is the year a Tesla is going to drive from New York to LA or from LA to New York without any human intervention. And so I went ahead and put my money down and got the car. And of course, I never made it anywhere near across the country with the full self-driving. Now, skeptical listeners or skeptical viewers might think that, Elon Musk is just a typical, CEO overpromising and underdelivering. But I actually have a different perspective on it. And my perspective is that in the early days, he didn't appreciate that this is as much or more of a sociology issue as a technical issue. And in his mind, if a human-driven vehicle crashes once every 500,000 miles, if he can do just a little bit better than that, then of course, his system is more safe, and why wouldn't everybody use it? But the reality is that as a society, our acceptance of a collision that's caused by human negligence for whatever reason is different, compared to our acceptance of a collision that involves an autonomous vehicle. And that's really the crux of the matter. There's no doubt that the technology that we have today is much more safe than human driving. The question is, by what factor must it be more safe to get widespread adoption? And if it's currently 10 times as safe, maybe that's not enough. Is the answer that it has to be 100 times as safe? I think nobody really knows that answer.
In December of last year, Tesla made headlines when 2 million vehicles were, quote, recalled, unquote.
Tesla recalling more than 2 million cars because of a problem with a system to make sure drivers are paying attention while using autopilot. This recall just announced in the last hour and a half, but it covers nearly every Tesla sold in the United States going back to 2012.
Chris says that the language used in many of these recalls isn't accurate.
So one thing that I know is that the transportation regulators need to get with the times. And, a software update is, something that happens in the ordinary course of any connected device. I've got an iPhone here, I've got an Android phone here, and I get software updates all the time on those. And, modern cars are just bigger, more powerful, but connected devices. They're all, controlled by software. That software needs to be updated. And so, most of the factory recalls as it relates to whether it's Cruise or Tesla, most of these recalls are actually software updates that just happen in the ordinary course.
If this is more of a sociological issue than a technological one, what is it going to take to win the hearts and minds of the general public?
We can all speculate. I don't think any of us knows, I don't think any of us can predict the answer. But I think the perspective that I can share with you and with everybody watching and listening, I think I have a pretty good idea about what our transportation is going to be like 30 years from now. How we get from where we are today to where we're going to be 30 years from now, I'm not sure. But if you think about whether it's a Cruise or a Tesla, one of these autonomous vehicles today, they make all of their own decisions as a single vehicle. One vehicle makes its own decisions about how to navigate. In the year 2050, all of the vehicles are going to be connected to each other, and the vehicles are also going to be connected to the traffic infrastructure. So connected to crosswalks, intersections, turn signals, stop signs, that sort of thing. And once all of the vehicles are connected to each other, that's when we get to zero or near zero collisions. And there are some other benefits that we get, as ancillary benefits. So we get reduced traffic congestion. Big cities like Los Angeles and New York are all of a sudden going to be decongested. We get benefits for the environment. If our cars don't have to idle in traffic so much, if they don't have to stop and start so much, it's better for the environment. That's where we're going to be, say, 30 years from now. And I'm sure everybody listening and everybody watching would agree and would accept that that's a much better transportation system than what we have today. I'm not sure how things are in Tennessee, but I'm in our office in Dubai, but I'm based in Las Vegas. And I can tell you in Las Vegas, the way I look at it is if I had a choice between a computer making the decisions about another vehicle on the road, or, I had a person who's maybe distracted with, something that's happening on their phone, or, somebody, depending, especially if you're going out at night and if you're close to the strip, somebody that's maybe under the influence of alcohol or something else, I would take the computer any day of the week over those alternatives. That's the way I look at it, but everybody has their own views about it.
So what are some of the misconceptions that everyday people have about AVs?
There's a couple of important misconceptions. And maybe by way of background, I should explain to some people listening or watching who might not be as familiar with the subject. There are different levels of autonomy. There are 5 or 6 different levels of autonomous driving. Obviously the highest levels, you don't even need to have a person in the car. And at the middle levels, you need a person in the car paying attention. The computer can do most of the driving. The person needs to be ready to take control, if something goes wrong. And at the lower levels, it's really just more like driver assistance. We are not, whether you're talking about Cruise or Tesla or anybody else, we are not at the highest level of autonomous driving today. So the systems that we've been talking about, Tesla, Cruise, and others, these fall into the category of driver assistance systems. So legally, the vehicle requires a driver. So there's a driver assistance system, but there has to be a driver in the seat. Driver has to be paying attention, and the driver has to be ready to take over, should it become necessary. That's the level of the technology today. And the incidents that we read about from time to time, like it seems like whenever a Tesla is involved in a collision, because it gets a lot of clicks, it'll be on the front page. Whenever there's an incident like that, I shouldn't say whenever, but more often than not, when there's an incident involving an autonomous vehicle today, it's as a result of the driver not respecting the limitations of the technology. So I think that's the first misconception that it's important for everybody to understand, is that these are very advanced driver assistance systems, but they are assistance systems, and they are not a substitute for a responsible driver in the behind the wheel. That's the first one. I guess the second misconception that I'd like to address is I'll take Las Vegas as an example. I think it's a really good example. So in Las Vegas, on any given weekend, we have 20 or 30 collisions involving vehicles in Las Vegas on a weekend, and a lot of those are the result of phones and other distractions. Some of them are the result, or partly the result, of the fact that there's a lot of tourists in Las Vegas, so people that are not familiar with the roads. Some of them are obviously the result of people going out and having a little bit too much fun before they get behind the wheel. And because there are 20 or 30 of these every weekend in Las Vegas, I don't know, you might be able to find them in the news somewhere, but I think I read the news like most people. I read the front page, I read the headlines, and occasionally I click and read the full story. I never read anything about any of these collisions. But if there's, whether you're talking about Cruise or Tesla or any of these other autonomous systems, whenever, if one of those systems is involved in a collision, it becomes front page news. The second misconception is really about, the relative safety or lack of safety of these systems. And the news, unfortunately, at least the news that I see and consume, doesn't do a very responsible job or very good job of putting into context the safety of Cruise and Tesla and others.
We'll learn about how autonomous vehicles work, how long before we see them fully adopted, what the AV sector can learn from the EV sector, and more, after a word from our sponsor. Perception is not always reality.
And, there's this perception that the dealerships are more expensive for everything, and InteliChek kind of confirms that that's not the case.
InteliChek helps dealerships become aware of where their prices stand in regard to their competitors.
And InteliChek does a good job of giving us that pricing data to confirm that we're in the market.
And this allows dealerships to make their customers aware of their competitive pricing.
I placed 2 placards in the business center so they could see that while they're over there working on computers. Also placed it in our coffee area. We have a glass wall there, so when they walk in, as they're putting their creamer and sugar in their coffee, they're going to look up and see the pricing for our pricing as well as our competitors.
Introducing InteliShare. InteliShare contains all of InteliChek's promotional tools that you can use to promote your favorable prices, including InteliAds, the printable flyers that you can show off in easel displays, InteliMedia for your digital media boards, and InteliWidgets, so you can show off price comparisons on your website and even let your customers schedule from the widget.
Just having access to that data that they're able to provide gives us a good plan of how we're going to proceed.
Call 877-827-7273 or go to InteliChek.com to find out more about how the InteliShare series can help you grow your business.
Like any perception system, whether you're talking about human perception or computer perception, the systems are not perfect. They don't perceive everything perfectly. The computers are significantly more perceptive or more accurate than humans. The computers can also perceive things much more quickly and reliably than humans. So those are maybe a couple of reasons why the autonomous systems are more safe than human drivers. But still, the computers are not perfect. At a high level, these computer perception systems, there's 2 components. There's the hardware and the software. And companies like Cruise and Tesla are taking slightly different approaches to the hardware. So Tesla is using a cameras-only system. I think it's 9. They have about 9 cameras that are installed in every Tesla vehicle. And the cameras are, obviously all around the vehicle. Some of the cameras have a more narrow focus, so they're designed to see further into the distance. Some of them have a wider focus, so they're designed to see things that are closer to the vehicle. And then there's a piece of software that takes into account all of the video from all of the cameras and tries to recognize other road users, whether it's other vehicles or whether it's pedestrians. Also, obviously, trying to recognize traffic infrastructure, stop signs, lanes, traffic lights, that sort of thing. Cruise, I believe, and I think just about every other popular autonomous system, in addition to cameras, uses a more basic sensor technology called LiDAR. The difference between LiDAR and cameras or video is as follows. Cameras and video is obviously much more high resolution. With a camera, I can easily, in most cases, differentiate from a car to a truck to a bicycle to a person to anything else that I might find on the road. LiDAR is a bit more like a blunt force instrument. With LiDAR, I know, okay, there's something out there. I may not be exactly sure what it is, but I know there's something out there. And in the case of Tesla, there's been, I think, at least probably more than one, but I'm aware of one incident involving a Tesla where at least the preliminary review of the accident is somebody was actually killed. There was a Tesla where, again, the driver wasn't paying attention and the Tesla didn't see a large semi-truck that had been parked on the road. And if I recall correctly, the lighting, the color of the truck and the lighting conditions and the weather conditions made it difficult for the camera system to see the truck that was in front of the Tesla. And so there's been at least one case where, as far as I know, the Tesla basically drove into the side of the truck at highway speeds, like 70, 75 miles an hour. The person or people inside the Tesla were killed. Very, very tragic. With a LiDAR-based system, they're not as vulnerable to different kinds of lighting, to different kinds of weather conditions. The LiDAR is something that, I don't know if anything is completely foolproof, but the LiDAR is about as close to foolproof as you're going to get. So different manufacturers are taking different approaches to the hardware. As far as the software is concerned, I think this is a really important point for people that might be listening or watching. All the software that I know of is based on a technology called machine learning. So machine learning is a branch of artificial intelligence. And basically the way machine learning works is we take a set of data. In the case of self-driving, that data would be pictures of other cars, pictures of bicycles, pedestrians, stop signs, anything you might expect to see on the road. We'll take pictures of those. And we'll try to get pictures that are as diverse as possible in terms of the lighting, daytime, nighttime, different weather conditions, different parts of the country or parts of the world. Try to get as many different pictures as possible. And then the engineers use a process called training. They train machine learning models or AI models. They train these models based on the data. And so obviously, the quality of the models and the ability of the models to detect pedestrians, cars, stop signs, etc., is going to be proportional to the size and quality of the data that it's trained on. In other words, if I get 2 or 3 pictures of stop signs and I use that to train my model, and then my car is self-driving on the road and it comes across a different stop sign, a stop sign that looks a little bit different compared to the 2 or 3 that I used for training the model. There's a good chance that my car is not going to recognize that slightly different stop sign. But on the other hand, if I have 100,000 or 1,000,000 different stop signs, and I train my model based on all of these different stop signs, it's very unlikely that when my car goes out on the road that it's going to encounter a stop sign that it's not going to recognize. And so what does this mean for us as people that might be thinking about buying a self-driving car, or maybe somebody who's concerned about other self-driving cars on the road? It means a couple of things. Number one, the quality of these self-driving systems is constantly improving. So as Cruise, as Tesla, as they're able to collect more and more data, like the more miles they have driven on the road, more data they collect, the better their training sets become and the better their models become at recognizing, other road users and traffic infrastructure. And a second thing that's really important to understand, I think, is because the quality of, it's a bit of a chicken and the egg problem. So we want the safest self-driving that we can get, but, we have to start somewhere. And I think Tesla's done a pretty good job of balancing the need to get started and to collect data, while at the same time keeping things, for the most part, on the within the guardrails and keeping things relatively safe.
George Downs from the Wall Street Journal talked about this chicken and egg scenario in his recent report on autonomous vehicles.
Driverless taxi company Cruise has had a bumpy month. Its autonomous driving permits were suspended in California after a woman was dragged 20 feet under one of its vehicles. The company then paused operations in every single one of its US markets to focus on rebuilding public trust. And that could be a challenge. See, as driverless companies try to increase public acceptance of their tech, they're rolling out more and more vehicles onto public roads. But that increases the probability that one of these cars could have an accident that damages the paintwork and the reputation of the technology. While every safe journey may be one step forward, every collision can be 2 steps back. A recent AAA study found that the number of Americans afraid of self-driving technology has actually increased. So how can driverless car companies rebuild trust after a crash?
The companies don't publish this data, so it's a bit of speculation, but the speculation is that because Tesla has been offering self-driving for so many years and across so many vehicles, I think they have something like 5 or 10 times as much data as anybody else in the industry. And that's a big competitive advantage for Tesla. That's, the biggest reason why the Tesla full self-driving system is able to do so much more than their competitors today. And as long as Tesla continues to maintain the lead in terms of the number of vehicles, the self-driving vehicles, that they have deployed on the road, they're going to continue to collect more data than anybody else. Their training set is going to grow bigger and faster than anybody else. And so we should expect their self-driving technology to continue to be a little bit better than anybody else's.
Chris has said that by the year 2050, autonomous vehicles will be the norm. But with machine learning, will it take that long?
I think it's a very good point that you make. And I'll go back to the very beginning of our conversation. I agree, technology is not the limiting factor. I think it's a sociology question. If we decided that we wanted to get there sooner, it's going to require some government regulation. So in the same way that the government regulates, the frequencies of telephones, and the government regulates interoperability between an iPhone and an Android and interoperability between different carriers. So we're going to have the same kinds of regulatory problems in terms of getting a Cruise to talk to a Tesla and making sure that they can both talk to the street lights in New York and the intersections in Los Angeles. But if we decided that we wanted to get there, I think we have the technology to do it today. And I'll go back to the point that we discussed earlier. Even today, a single self-driving car, a Tesla, is roughly 10 times more safe than a human. So we certainly have the technology to do it today. Again, yes, it's a question of sociology.
Recent EV sales seem to indicate that there is an electric vehicle hangover of late. Is there anything that the AV sector can learn from the hurdles that EVs are facing?
To me, I see AVs and EVs very differently. So I know if I go and buy a Tesla AV today, if I'm an average North American driver and I buy the self-driving, use the self-driving from Tesla, I know that that's going to keep me about 10 times as safe as doing the driving myself. So I get an immediate benefit from that. With EVs, I think the question is, are they really benefiting the environment, or are they just kind of kicking the can down the road and, trading some, burning some gas for mining some battery components. It's beyond my expertise to answer, to answer that question. But to me, like, the benefit of an EV depends on some downstream technology. So if I've got an EV combined with solar power, or if I've got an EV combined with, hydroelectric or wind power, okay, maybe, again, this is not my expertise, but, maybe there's a benefit there. But, if I've got an EV and somebody's just burning gas in order to produce the electricity to put into my EV, I haven't really accomplished anything. So in my mind, AVs are an immediate public safety benefit. I think everybody watching and everybody listening can relate to the problem of cell phones and driving, for example. And that's something that AVs, obviously help with. I guess if I put my own question to myself, if I think about 2050, what do I see on the roads in 2050? I see all AVs on the road. I'm not sure if I see all EVs. I probably see more of a mix, I guess. Whether you're talking about gasoline or natural gas, electric batteries or something else.
Chris has mentioned that smarter AI works with some OEMs. So I asked him if he could name names.
I can't name names, but I guess what I can share, and what's probably most interesting for the people that are watching and listening, I think that every single OEM in the world is actively working on the picture that I painted at the beginning of our conversation about 2050 and all of the vehicles being connected to each other and no more collisions, no more congestion. I think every OEM is working on that problem. I think we're going to see a lot of consolidation among the OEMs as the business continues to shift from a manufacturing dependent business to more of a AI technology dependent business. It's just a different scale financially. And I think that we're going to see more and more consolidation among the OEMs, essentially trying to pool their resources together in order to tackle some of these big AI problems and to get there first. I thought it was very interesting. I think it was a week or 2 weeks ago, Apple pulled the plug on its self-driving project. So that was sort of for the last, I want to say close to 10 years, the last 8 or 9 years, that was sort of the worst kept secret in Silicon Valley, that Apple had a few hundred or 1,000 people working on a self-driving car. And I thought it was very interesting that Apple pulled the plug on it. If a company like Apple, is essentially saying that they don't think they can compete, they don't think they can be competitive in that business, that's a pretty big and pretty tough business. If I had the opportunity to give a final message to anybody that might be watching or listening, I'd say, remember, we're not at full autonomy yet. These are very advanced driver assistance systems. So if you're going to use them, please, these vehicles weigh thousands of pounds and they're traveling at all kinds of speeds. Please use them responsibly.
I'd like to thank Chris Piche with Smarter AI for this most fascinating look into AVs. You can find the Multi-Point Inspection podcast on Apple Podcasts, Amazon, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And be sure to subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. It helps with the algorithm thingy. Executive producers for the Multi-Point Inspection podcast are Melissa Marlette and Joe Gibson. It is written, produced, and narrated by me, Brandon Barnett. This episode's featured music is Astropunk by Reveille. InteliChek. Know your competition.